What's good, everybody? This is CP, and today I'm going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Today I'm going to talk about a few low-key / underrated free agents the Maple Leafs could target this summer. Now, obviously, locking up a legit number one goalie is the main priority for the team this offseason. And for many Maple Leaf fans, it would be huge if they can bring in someone like Darcy Kuemper, Philly Husso, Marc-Andre Fleury, or maybe resign Jack Campbell. But let's keep things a little bit more realistic here and not build our hopes up. Once again, like previous off seasons, the Leafs have very limited cap space to work with this summer. And if we look at the free agent pool, especially for goaltending, I'm not gonna lie, but it looks pretty dry this year. I suspect a lot of teams looking for a goaltender are pretty much going after the same guys. So in short, it's a pretty good summer to be a free agent goalie, because some of these guys are gonna get paid. In my opinion, this puts the Leafs at a little bit of a disadvantage because they have limited cap space and they likely don't have enough firepower or money to win the bidding wars. With that in mind, here's a list of a few underrated free agents who might be more reasonable targets for the Leafs to sign this offseason. One of the first low-key free agent goalies the Leafs could target might be a guy like Kevin Lankinen. Now, to me, he's more of a tier 2 or even tier 3 goalie in this year's free agent pool. But I definitely think he could be worth a shot, especially if the Leafs strike out on bigger names like Kuemper, Campbell, Husso, and Marc-Andre Fleury. In some ways, I could see Lankinen turn out to be one of the sleeper UFA signings this summer. For the past few seasons, he averaged about 35 games a year in Chicago with a .901 save percentage, along with a 3.23 goals against average. Obviously, those aren't amazing numbers, but they aren't bad either, considering how he played behind some very bad Chicago Blackhawks team. In terms of experience, I would argue that his numbers of total NHL games played are similar to that of Jack Campbell before he joined the Maple Leafs. And yes, Campbell's save percentage were a little bit better. However, we can't forget that he was also playing behind better defenders in LA, including Drew Doughty, Jake Muzzin, and Alex Martinez. So best case scenario, if Toronto can sign Lankinen for a good price, maybe this could turn out to be a Jack Campbell 2.0 situation. That would be kinda nice and a dream come true for many Maple Leaf fans. Obviously, it is a gamble, but money-wise, Lankinen was almost near league minimum last year, as he was only an $800K cap hit for the past 2 years. So if he really wanted to join Toronto, I don't think it will cost the Leafs an arm or a leg to get him. Let's assume that he wants a little bit of a raise. Maybe something like $900K or around $1.1 million gets it done. If you were to ask me, this is one of those low-risk deals Dubas and Leafs management could consider, especially if they're desperate during free agency. At the same time, Toronto might be a better place for Lankinen to continue to develop his game and potentially become a legit number one NHL goalie. Obviously, Toronto is a better team than Chicago, so there is a good chance that he might put up better numbers than he did the last few years. Don't get me wrong, he might not come in and be a bona fide number one right out of training camp, but there's always a chance that he could be maybe a 1B and give Toronto a solid 40 to 50 games, which I think is quite possible. Considering how he averaged about 35 games the last 2 years, adding 10 to 15 games might be a very digestible challenge for Lankinen. Obviously, bringing Lankinen in might not solve all the Leafs goaltending issues next season, but to keep things positive, he might be a very solid plan B option to bring in to see what he's got. The Leafs gambled on Campbell a few years ago and it worked out quite well. And Lankinen is only 27 years old, so he might be at an age where he's just starting to hit his prime. And with that in mind, could the Leafs maybe score again with someone like him? I'm 50-50 about signing him, but if you were the Leafs GM and if the free agent pool is running dry, would you take a run at Lankinen or would you go after a goaltender with a little bit more experience? Another low-key free agent goalie the Leafs could target might be someone like Braden Holtby. Especially if the Leafs aren't afraid to go after someone a little bit older, Holtby might not be a horrible choice. Now, no doubt Holtby isn't the true number one goalie he was a few years ago, but he actually put up some okay numbers playing behind a very average Dallas Stars team last year. Holtby averaged a .913 save percentage along with a 2.78 goals against average. So definitely not horrible numbers considering how he was only a $2 million cap hit for the Stars last year. At almost 33, I don't suspect there to be a huge market for Holtby. So if the Leafs could maybe get him for something less than 1.5, 1.6 million, could he be worth the gamble? I would argue that they should at least consider, especially if they lose out on the bidding war for the other big dogs in the free agent market. Clearly, Holtby won't be your number one starter from day one, but at best, I could maybe see him as a 1B option who gives you a solid 25 to 30 games next year. We also can't forget that Holtby also brings in Stanley Cup winning experience and could be a nice veteran presence for the younger goalies and the younger players on the team. So bringing Holtby in just for those intangibles might be another good reason to give him a shot. Overall, I think Holtby might be one of those low-risk steal options with more upside than people think. Worst case scenario, if things don't pan out, you just eat his contract for maybe 1 to 2 years and move on to the next guy. And to be totally honest, I haven't really watched a lot of Holtby play since he left the Washington Capitals. But do you think he's still a worthwhile guy to go after in today's NHL? And is he a reasonable, underrated UFA target for the Leafs to go after? Or should they spend the money on someone a little bit younger with a little bit more upside? Moving on, Trevor Lewis might be a good low-budget, low-risk free agent forward for the Leafs to bring in this offseason. In my opinion, he makes a lot of sense if the Leafs are looking for an experienced, hard-working vet to round out the bottom of their lineup. Despite being 35, he is still a pretty solid bottom 6 forward in today's league who can still give you a solid 11 to 13 minutes a night. The Leafs also do have a history of bringing in older players to fill up the bottom of their lineup, and who knows, maybe Lewis could be the new Spezza or Thornton. Leafs bringing in Lewis might be a good idea mainly because, for one, it doesn't hurt to add a guy with Stanley Cup championship experience along with reliable defensive play. At this point in his career, Lewis was mostly a fourth liner with Calgary last year, but he was also used occasionally in the shutdown role and can also be part of the PK unit as well. Better yet, it's crazy to think about it, but after all these years, he's still in the league and is quite durable, as he appeared in 80 games for the Calgary Flames last year. He probably won't give you 12 to 14 goals like he did in LA a few years ago, but I would argue that he's still a very solid depth guy to have on your roster, especially if you plan to go deep in the playoffs. Contract-wise, he should come with very low risk. He only made $800K last year, and I suspect you can probably get him for around the same price point, or maybe just a little bit more expensive. Nonetheless, bringing Lewis into Toronto shouldn't put a huge dent on the Leafs' wallet. At this point, the Leafs already have a very solid top 6 forward group, so one of their main focuses should really be finding under-the-radar forwards who can play a responsible 200-foot game in the bottom 2 lines. And we can't forget that Lewis can also provide leadership, which should be valuable to have around in the room. In this particular free agent pool, I think Lewis might be one of the safer older players to target, especially if the Leafs are looking for a low-risk deal that doesn't break the bank. Do you think Lewis would be a reasonable guy for them to bring in, or is the money better spent elsewhere? Yeah, so let me know if you agree or disagree with what I said in this video. Feel free to comment below and share some of your thoughts, and I'll see everybody next time.